Hue Stuf video! This is my attempts at adding music. You know, still be forgiving. I did get some software today to improve my videos. Anyway, this is a Stuf video. Let me just... it's basically, like I was saying in my first video, this is all stuff I've collected over the years. I'll start off with, well, these. They're WWE, as it was called now, but back then it was WWF figures. Now, I never had any of these when I was at school, because, well, not to sound sort of snivelly in that. Basically, my parents weren't rich enough to buy me loads of figures. I used to make them out of plasticine myself. This is the Ultimate Warrior, who looked really good as a wrestler, but was pretty rubbish when it came to the wrestling. Normally he'd wear himself out running to the ring. And he didn't look physically like this. His bum's gone a bit pale because basically he's been sitting on a shelf for a long time. This is Hulk Hogan, who, you know, strangely this is all his upper body can do, and his legs don't move at all. Articulation on these, you know, could have really done with being a bit more like the He-Man figures, but he at the time these came out was one of the most popular wrestlers in the world. It was before everyone found out that he was taking steroids and all sorts of other stuff, and before he did Thunder in Paradise, I think really was the epitome of how crappy he became. This is Sergeant Slaughter. The strange thing about it is Sergeant Slaughter was a lot wide around the waist. They created this stupid plot line at WrestleMania, I think it was WrestleMania 7 back in 1991, because the Gulf War was on at the time. Vince McMahon thought it'd be a really good idea, let's make a patriotic thing like they'd done before with Iran and Hulk Hogan, with the Iron Sheik, and it sort of became quite distasteful, and he got a lot of bad press over it, and the feud was sort of dropped in a bit of a hurry. It wasn't the worst thing that Vince McMahon ever came up with an idea. I think that would be the Katie Vick. If anyone who knows anything about wrestling will know about the Katie Vick story. I'm not going to go into it here because it was really badly thought out. Anyway, next on my list of junk, I got this rubber last year at I think it was a Christmas party or something with my nephew, and my nephew has a tendency to want to take all of the prizes. He's a little bit, you know, doesn't like sharing. He's quite young, he's about 11 now, but it's a Triceratops. Oddly, it doesn't smell of anything. When I was a child, all the rubbers I had in my for school would smell like things like bubblegum or Coca-Cola or things like that, and this has no odour at all, but its legs move. You know, that's about it really. It doesn't have any spikes on its tail, so I'm not sure whether it's a Triceratops or more like a Mohawk-asaurus from the looks of its back. Anyway, next thing, this glass. Now, I got this in a charity shop. I can remember when Coca-Cola had this thing where you had to get a certain number of cans and send them back and get it through the post and all that, and it was a right palaver. It was as annoying as McDonald's and those Monopoly things where you basically win prizes if you get whole streets and all that. I got this in a charity shop for 50p, and it's one of my favourite glasses because it's not the top is great. If I'm walking holding something else, it doesn't slosh about, and it's exactly the same size and shape as a Coke can, even though I'm more of a Vimto or orange juice drinker. Anyway, these. Now, I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. I'm a big fan of John Pertwee's Doctor, basically because he's my favourite. I know other people probably go Tom Baker or Patrick Troughton or even the new ones. The only thing about this sonic screwdriver is based on the one that the third Doctor had around the time of the Sea Devils. The only drawback is I didn't know till I got it home and opened the packaging, it doesn't make the sound of that sonic screwdriver, and I don't have the electronic skills to alter it. It makes this noise or this noise, and that's the noise of basically David Tennant's sonic screwdriver, and I really hate David Tennant, mainly because he's not the Doctor for me. He's basically a Scotsman trying to sound like a Mockney, and I hated the series during that period of Doctor Who. It only started picking up when Matt Smith came along for me. I quite like Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, in that he seemed to be like he was shell-shocked, which I quite liked. I thought it added more character to the part. It's just a shame he only did one season, because I'd really like to see him break down and know what he'd done, because basically the War Doctor in the Day of the Doctor was an invention to fill in for Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, because before Christopher Eccleston got so peed off with the people who were running Doctor Who, he would have probably been in the Day of the Doctor, and basically all the words that the War Doctor said were basically Christopher Eccleston really in the original script. Anyway, this one I like it, but the sound isn't right. This one I got in a toy shop I think it was about 4 months ago. I was with my sister and my nephew and my niece, and we were basically just walking around, and in the sales they had sonic screwdrivers, and they were all the really horrible modern ones, like Matt Smith's one, the one that basically looks like a dildo. This one is the Tom Baker model, and it makes the proper noises. It's just like the one that appeared in Genesis of the Daleks. So I absolutely love this. I just wish I could get the third Doctor one, because it actually changed. He did have a more bulky sonic screwdriver that appeared in the last story of his first year, Inferno, but they weren't 100% clear whether it was a sonic screwdriver or not. But that one made a completely different noise, and he used it to open doors to the shed that he was doing experiments on. Right, this is Star Blazer. Now, Star Blazer were little comics that were sold in paper shops. They were usually 28p, and they were a lot smaller in size, and very rarely did they have continual stories. They sometimes had characters reappearing, but my suspicion is that many of the comics were possibly European ones that had been translated, because some of them were quite violent. There were quite sexy things in a lot of them as well, and they're all black and white. I've got quite a few of these knocking around, because they weren't just science fiction either. You had horror ones, you had swords and sorcery, detective, and they're really good. you know, I strongly recommend, if you come across them, see, this is number 219, so it gives you some idea of how many of these were made. But they're really good. The artists look like basically many of the early 2000 AD comics had, and Eagle comics had this sort of style to it, where everything was sort of harsh shapes, but very detailed, and the art in them. But the stories are all good. They're sort of, particularly the swords and sorcery ones. I was quite surprised because I'm not really a big fan of magic, but many of them were quite good. They were like sort of Conan the Barbarian. Next thing, I inherited these from my Uncle Pete, who has been very nice to me recently because I've had this depression. But these are the Star Trek annuals, and also he gave me some Doctor Who ones. These are from the 70s. Kids would get annuals like this for Christmas, and you know, this I think must have been sometime in the 70s. It's only £1.75. So yeah, I wonder if it's got a date on it. Copyright. No, I can't see a. But they were published strangely by BBC, because Star Trek was shown a lot of times when I was a child on BBC Two. You know, many people think that it was Star Trek: The Next Generation that actually killed the original series of Doctor Who, because it just looked a lot better, and it didn't cost the BBC that much to basically buy the releasing, you know, franchise thing for Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is strange as well, because when Star Trek Enterprise folded, at the same time BBC brought back Doctor Who, which, you know, I can understand why Star Trek Enterprise died. I was very sad about it because it was running up to a plot that would have become the war between Earth and the Romulans. Yeah, many of these comics, they're pretty crappy. Star Trek's never really managed to hit in the comic world that well. I think the only other comic character that has never really worked in comics for me was Indiana Jones, because there were a couple of times when they tried to bring back Indiana Jones and it didn't really work that well in the comic universe. I think it's basically because action on a screen is very different from action in the pages of a comic book. This is one, I didn't buy this at the time. I got it in a jumble sale years later, because I didn't grow up with Voltron. The only sort of anime super mech type thing that I used to watch when I was a child was one called Starfleet, and that was all puppets. And then later you had Transformers Headmasters, but that wasn't really super robots like Voltron. And it's basically, oh, nice knockers. It's basically got bits of the pilot episode. I eventually got video versions of Voltron, which I was really surprised was actually really good, because it did look a bit like sort of Battle of the Planets, which Battle of the Planets I wasn't really that keen on, because it was really, the plots weren't that original, they weren't that interesting. For me, the best anime series I can remember from a child was Ulysses 31, because I was absolutely mad about that, and Cities of Gold I suppose, but Ulysses 31 really did catch my imagination more. Bit of sweat in my eye, sorry. But the series I quite liked when I was a teenager, that I got on video, manga video, was Giant Robo, and it reminded me a lot of the battles in that to the battles that you had in Voltron, and then there was later Power Rangers, which I wasn't a big fan of, because Power Rangers, every episode seemed to be the same episode, you know. They'd have a fight, the monster would fight them, they beat the monster, then the monster would become giant, then they made themselves into a super robot, and then they hit it a couple of times, cut it with their sword, it'd explode, and that'd be the end of the episode. Oh, for some reason I've got a colour thing here, paint colour thing in here. Weird. Yeah. But Voltron, the cartoon was actually really good. I was really surprised. It looked really basic, but what was good about it was it had a genuinely evil baddie who, you know, wanted to kill people and have slaves and was barbaric and things like that. And I was really surprised. But yeah, the comic isn't really up to the standards of the cartoon, but you know, this is just like an annual. This is from 1987, which is funny because it's got a date of when it was produced in 1984, so I suppose there must be 3 of them knocking around somewhere. Yeah. The last one is another one I got from my uncle, because I wasn't born till 1976, so my mum definitely won't be buying me this when I was 2 years old. But it's basically a Doctor Who annual. Again, it was made by the BBC. It's got some quite nice watercolour paintings, really, of the Doctor. I doubt it was really into the same timeline, because I found with most of the actual media released at the time, because of the seasons, you wouldn't have something like Leela appear. You'd have Sarah Jane, which seemed a bit strange because Sarah Jane had left in 1976. Odd stuff that appears in these, basically as filler. You've got stories that are quite yeah, they're not really up to the show at all. For some reason the Doctor there looks like he's going to sneeze, but I don't know. I forgot what he's called. And it's got stuff to do with space which doesn't really make much sense. Yeah. Yeah, this planet guide's a little bit sort of not using a lot. There's a game, I think that must be from Face of Evil, where he's sort of clutching his face, you know, where Zoannon's shouting at him and then suddenly gets a little boy's voice because he's a computer with multiple personality. Yeah, pencil sketches. I don't think that's Leela. No, it doesn't look like Leela. See, that's from the actual title screen of Doctor Who. Yeah, not a lot of the art's all right, but it being only in sort of one colour, and you change the page and it uses another colour. It must be something to do with the printing, that they couldn't do sort of multicolour printing, probably on the cheap. You know, more Tom Baker pictures. Yeah, it's just a strange piece of sort of stuff from the time. I should answer the phone, but I'll do it in a minute. This is really removing the professionalness of my video here. Yeah, for some reason this has got 4 in it, but he hasn't got a beard, so he can't really be 4, and he hasn't got red hair, because the original Norsean 4 wasn't really a nice bloke. But yeah, more oh, this is actually in colour, this comic, but it seems to be in weird collection of colours. Oh, go away! Yeah, yeah. It's probably my mum. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely not Leela. I don't know who it is. It doesn't really look like Sarah Jane. It looks more like Linda Lovelace for some reason. But yeah, yeah. Space crossword not done. So maybe a collector's item if people want to collect older Doctor Who tat. There's a spot the difference. Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, there were a lot of things like this where you basically get stuff in the back of things like Transformers comics, where they were trying to fill out the comic. So someone would go, oh, let's stick a puzzle in there, or stick something else in there, and it was usually really crap. But yeah, oh, another puzzle thing with the Doctor looking like he's trying to hold in a fart, and for some reason the Doctor in this picture has got a haircut like a woman. Yeah, yeah, maybe the artist just thinks, I'll do a big nose and a scarf, that can be the Doctor. And yeah, he's dressed like he was in I think season 14. He looks like he's wearing the outfit from Seeds of Doom, not to be mistaken with Seeds of Death. That was a Patrick Troughton story. But I don't know who this woman is, because it doesn't look like Leela, and it doesn't look like Sarah Jane. It looks a little bit like the first Romana, but I'm not sure. You know, the nose looks a bit too big. So that was basically 1970 annual. Right. I'll whack in a bit more. So that was Hue Stuf video. The music's from an extremely badly made movie from the early 80s. It was an Italian production of a film called Supersonic Man, and at some point I've got to do a review of it because it is truly awful. It's so bad even Riff Tracks did a version of it. Anyway, toodaloo.